When we think about imminent death, we think about a warm hospital bed and a crowd of family members around oneself. It is somehow deeply ingrained in our beliefs. But around these parts, deaths are less comfortable, and what comes after is even worse. A phenomenon older than any of us and that had gone unnoticed until very recently has grown into a life-threatening societal issue, the doe epidemic. Here, we will explain just how it is possible to die and never be identified, and then left to rot at the bottom of a file drawer for decades. The case of the Lady of the Dunes will be used as an example. Here is how to become no one. First, let's explore the most popular explanations for unidentified decedents: homelessness, illegal immigration, and costly healthcare. When it comes to homelessness, the explanation is clear. People pass away on the streets with no home addresses or people to identify them, oftentimes without ID. Illegal immigration also is problematic for the lack of official papers. It creates a totally anonymous social class from which any malicious individual can pick freely, with the assurance that the victim would never even have a name. Illegal immigrants also tend to avoid visiting hospitals, oftentimes giving birth on the streets or going through serious health problems alone. In the case of the Lady of the Dunes, she was a Caucasian woman, possibly between 25 and 40 years old. She did not seem to match any possible vulnerable minority, aside from just being a woman. Having died from blunt force trauma, the theory of the natural death is disproved. So how does a white woman from a seemingly good financial background, suggested by her dental work, goes from being a living, breathing human to being a nameless body? Well, she was murdered in the 1970s, and back in the days, a lot of younger individuals would follow the trend of hitchhiking. Many of the 70s does were confirmed hitchhikers, adding another potential category of doe, the hitchhikers. So let's travel back in time. We are in the 70s, and everyone has long hair. The world is peaceful and friendly. Our young victim could have wanted to travel and set out to cross the country by hitchhiking. Picture an independent woman, potentially with dead family and no close friends. She sets out to complete her itinerary, but falls prey to an ill-willed individual before getting to her destination, dies by blunt force trauma to the head, is robbed of any identification, and left for dead in the dunes of Provincetown, Massachusetts. What happens once the body is found, and how does she remain no one? First, DNA testing was non-existent at the time, so the authorities had to be a little crafty. They were able to complete an approximate profile: female, Caucasian, between 25 and 40 years old, 145 pounds, and 5.6 feet tall. Reddish blonde hair and extensive New York-style dental work. Fingerprints were not an option as the victim's hands were cut off. Does that sound like anyone you know? Well, probably. These profiles were so unspecific that they could just belong to anyone. And that is how you become no one. Simple, isn't it? Easy almost. Imagine for a few seconds that you are a murderer and are looking for the ideal victim. Wouldn't these vulnerable people be ideal? The homeless, the paperless, the hitchhiker, the infant, the sick, the elderly? But you too. Anyone could fall into the cracks of our identification system, just like the Lady of the Dunes did. Just like the 4,400 unidentified descendants found each year only in the United States. So what would have helped the Lady of the Dunes to be identified? When trying to come up with an identification, medical examiners look for anything unique when processing the body. Things such as scars, tattoos, dental work, and just recently, DNA. The Lady of the Dunes body was exhumed 3 times, the most recent being in 2013, to allow for DNA testing. There were several leads, but each stranger than the previous one. In 2015, author Stephen King's son brings to police attention a new theory. After hearing about the case by reading The Skeleton Crew, he tells the investigators that a woman resembling the victim was seen in the 1975 movie Jaws, wearing the exact same clothing the victim was. But while this was a good observation, The lead investigator for the case believed that the theory was too far-fetched. To this day, the Jaws lead is the only one with believable grounds, but it remains uninvestigated. For that, we cannot blame anyone but the authorities, who immediately considered it ludicrous. But here is the thing. The movie Jaws was filmed in 1974 in Massachusetts, not far away from Provincetown. It is possible that the victim was an actress that played an extra in the movie before leaving by hitchhiking and meeting her demise on the way. From the lack of identifiable features to being at the wrong place at the wrong time, the case of the Lady of the Dunes is still open, forever waiting for the one who will give her back her name, like thousands just like her. Until then, the lady remains nameless. If you or a relative have any valuable information about the Lady of the Dunes, please contact the Provincetown Police Department at 508-487-1212.